All right, everyone, welcome back for the episode of Carnivore Trades. Today is Tuesday, October 24th, 2023. If you're not done so already, please give the video a thumbs up, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Come find me on carnivoretrades.com for swing trading alerts and analysis. Anyways, let's get into it here today. So, market's kind of a chop fest, and obviously get the sense that we're kind of waiting on Microsoft, Google, which I'll try to take you into the bell for that. Either way, I don't expect it to make at least... I don't expect it to be of too much consequence here in the near term. There's a lot going on outside of earnings season coming up in the next week. One of those things being a bond auction tomorrow. So I think whichever way we go on Microsoft, Google, which honestly I probably think is up a little bit, that could get overshadowed by a pretty hefty sized bond auction tomorrow. I believe of 17 week notes, if I'm not mistaken. But either way here, market's gapped up. And then we had kind of a situation like yesterday where we tried to pump up in the morning and we faded those gains off, almost went to the flat line, and then we just kind of floated back up here. What's interesting to me, take a look at the VIXY here, down 4.6%. And look at where it was at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and look at where it is now. This is ahead of an earnings event, so a little strange to see volatility coming in as sharply as it is ahead of a volatility event. VIX down 6.5. It's a pretty big move down. So market must be confident here that Microsoft and Google are going to do well. If not, maybe we could see a little bit of selling here. I think Microsoft, again, I'm giving the market the upside bias here. I'd give Microsoft the upside bias at 340. And then Google, I think, could probably pump up a little bit more. I don't know. Maybe it could go to 145. I'm not really sure. It's earnings, so it's hard to predict. But I think Google have some upside. Maybe Microsoft could have a little upside too. They'll probably get some market up. We do have Snapchat, which we all know is going to sell off, and then you just buy the dip every time they have earnings, and then you sell it before earnings. But in any case, markets here. Your upside in the short term is this back, upsloping trend line. Again, going back to the October low, pivot. We broke through it. So right there in that 20 moving average, 4,300 whole round number, that's kind of where I think this market wants to test, right? So even if we're going to go lower or higher, right, you got to test this area. So if we're going to break down, the bears would want this, and then you can take it back down. For bulls, you do that, and then maybe you can do one of these, right? So that's kind of what I think is going to happen regardless. It's just a matter of do we take out that pivot or not. But in any case, and obviously my subscribers know exactly what my thoughts are. But in any case, we're back above the 200 moving average. That's a positive. You could make a case that there's an island here. I don't love it. I would prefer more of a gap. But an island is, a gap down after a down move or an up move, and then kind of a gap up and reversal there. So it's possible, but I'm not really seeing a robust move. In fact, I told my Discord members earlier, like this gap kind of felt a lot like this one here on the 16th, where we gapped up. We held up pretty well. We actually pumped a little bit. And then the next day we gapped down. We tried to break out. We couldn't. And then we ended up selling off pretty sharply. So I just, don't think it's the healthiest here. But short term, I'm going to try and give the market the upside bias to 4,300. At least until tomorrow, right? So we'd have that bond auction at 1 p.m. Then we have PCE on Friday. Also jobless claims and I think some retail sales, if I'm not mistaken, on Friday as well. Or, Thursday. Let me just double check. So we have PMIs and then PCE on Friday. And then tomorrow we do have Meta, Boeing, ServiceNow, Thermo Fisher, T-Mobile, ADP, so a few pretty big KLA 10 core, so a few pretty big companies here. Obviously, Meta being one of those. So we double check on that because TD always gets it wrong. So it is tomorrow. Okay. Anyways, so we have those earnings, but right now that's what we're going to look for here in the short term. Again, if we take this pivot out, well, then things get interesting, and I think 4150 becomes a real possibility. But right now the market is holding up. One thing I also want to talk about and touch on here, two things actually. So we're looking at the ES here just because it trades continuously. But notice something here today, and there's a couple of things I noticed today that no one's talking about because all anyone cares about is Microsoft and Google. But here's the 10-year note. So this is inverted yield essentially. And you can see obviously for a while, it's been a pretty positive correlation, right? This goes down, the market freaks out. This goes up, the market calms down. But the last couple of days, we've seen a few switches here. And if we look on the intraday here, market kind of traded up, this went down, then this started to trade up here, and the market was going down with it. Why does that matter? It could mean, and again, it's just, we've been noticing this more and more recently, but it could mean that bonds are starting to act more risk off than risk on. So if we look at the TLT, that's actually at the highs of the day right now, as is the spiders. But the spiders sold off in the middle of the day, and the TLT, held up all day long. Additionally, looking at XLU, that's outperforming the SPY, up 2.8. XLP outperforming the SPY, up 1% on the day, right? So risk-off sectors acting well. Another thing I want to show you too. Everybody called the demise of the dollar yesterday. That's it. It's breaking down. It's a failed pattern. And there it is right back up. And you can make a case now. That's a pretty good little pennant / falling wedge pattern on the DXY. You break through that. That could be another bull move here in the dollar. Something to keep an eye on there. One last thing too. Nobody caught this one except for, one or two people that I follow. But KRE, this is not good. It is nicely off the lows here, but, take a look at this intraday. This is not participated in the rally. And yeah, it's coming off the lows here, but just an ugly chart. You holding this pivot here. If this continues lower with bonds bidding up, with utilities bidding up, with consumer staples bidding up relative to SPY and QQQ, it's not a good sign. Another good negative sign here too is they finally updated spreads here, and they're flat, but this is still increasing, right? The last time this increased sharply was, when? Oh, in March. When was that? When we had the regional bank crisis. What's KRE doing? Absolutely puking. What are bonds doing? Acting like risk off. Just notice those little things here. Just pay attention to them. But Microsoft and Google are like the distraction right now. So it's something to keep an eye on. What else do we have? Okay, one other thing. And you got the story of the day, right? Bitcoin. Last time Bitcoin pumped like this was when? In March, regional bank crisis, right? And another thing I find interesting about this, holding up at 35, I think that's really good resistance here right now on Bitcoin. But look at Mara, that's 50% off of its year-to-date highs. Coinbase, 30% off of its year-to-date highs. Riot, 50% off of its year-to-date highs. Hive, over 50% off its year-to-date highs. Hut, you get the idea, right? The Bitcoin miners, crypto miners are not acting well. I mean, they're getting a bid with Bitcoin, but it's not like they're making new highs. I don't know. Maybe Bitcoin's bidding for a different reason than what people think. Like it's the ETF. Maybe it's just risk off. Maybe there is a problem with the banks. The best bank, JP Morgan, that looks terrible. That faded that entire earnings gap. I mean, nothing to say this doesn't, you start to take out these levels here. This can go down to that gap fill. So anyways, to not digress too much, there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of cross currents, and we're in a environment that is not like anything we've seen in 40 years. So you guys know. Triple Qs here, up 1% on the day, holding up well, slight nominal low. Will be interesting to see if this puts in a new low or not. If the market does, I think the Qs probably hold up a little bit more. But in any case, short term, look at 364 area for resistance, maybe even 365. Again, Microsoft and Google are going to, be a big deal. Let's take a fib here too. So short-term fib, 362.50 and then 365 is your 618. So we'll watch those levels if we do pump up. Again, this is all contingent on that, but those are the levels we're watching on the Qs. Again, a weekly close below 350 would be a big negative though. IWM getting a small bounce here. Again, 165 was just a downside objective. Not necessarily a buy level, but near term, maybe it could retest 170. DIA, Diamond here up 70, about 0.75%, we'll call it. I still think this wants to go to 325, but we'll see if and when we get there. Remember, the Dow's price cap weighted, so don't put too much behind it. Semiconductors today up 1.25, decent day there. You'll have some resistance here at about 148 with that red bar and 50 MA. Again, weekly close below this pivot would be a big negative. IGV holding up okay, up 1%. up 322. Again, holding that wedge pattern. Short term, red bar high at 347. And we'll just leave it at that for now. You could also make a case that kind of coincides with that trend line there going back to the beginning of year as well. Dow Transports cannot get out of their own way. They are green, but let's face it, it's not a strong day here. I still think you got to go test 14,000. You guys know my stance there, and I won't spend too much time on it. All right, let's get over here to rates. And the 2-year here holding up okay. Again, still holding trend. No problems here with the chart. Just making higher highs and higher lows. 2-year looks fine. 5-year looks fine as well. Where I don't like it as much as on the long end. The 10-year backing off a little bit here. This does look a little top heavy. Again, I wouldn't be surprised though to see one more nominal high in yields. I think the 10 and the 30 might want to go to parity with the Fed funds. So maybe 525, maybe 550 on the long end. But after yesterday, there was a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, saying that's it, that the bonds they're going to start bidding, that it's yields have topped. So a lot of the time you can get one more washout if too many people are trying to call a bottom. But right now, yields I still think are top heavy regardless, and I don't think it's going to be that much longer before we get some type of definitive interim medium term top in yields. And the housing here, XHB down 16 cents. I don't like this. Down 11 cents, rather, 16 basis points. It still has some support around 69 to 70. VNQ, just still a dog here, but it is up 1.25 on the day. I can't find anything good about this chart other than the fact that it's so beaten down already. Maybe some of the CRE stuff is priced in, and that's really all I can give you. XLF up 0.75%. But what I don't like, obviously, as I've mentioned, is the KRE. Regionals very weak. Large banks very weak. Large bank index very weak as well. That probably needs to go test double bottom. Broker dealers here up just over 0.5%. I still think that needs to go to 450. That crude here breaking down a little bit. So weakness there. You could make a case. You got a down move here, an inside bar bear chop. So watch that. Big red bar. Again, I told you I didn't like that weekly close there. And it is, starting to hammer on these lower levels. Could be telling us things are slowing down. Again, if bonds are bidding and utilities are bidding, and we're starting to see sometimes inverse relationship between bonds and stocks, it's the market's way of telling us things are changing. Again, they don't happen all at once, but they do happen, and sometimes they happen on their own time. Market's about to close here, but crude down 2.2. Got to hold this pivot. Otherwise, I think it's down to 78. There's the closing bell. XLE, look at that fall, down 1.41 on the day. Again, I told you guys, I don't like this. Look, I talk about this stuff all the time. Did you build support up here? No, he didn't, right? So you'll have a couple pivots down here, but that's really it. So I don't like XLE. I'm not touching it right now. It's way too volatile. XOP's holding up a little bit better. Still don't like anything about that. OIH, I think, is the least volatile, and that's holding up all right. But again, I don't like that weekly gap. You could make a case too. It's just for entertainment here. You could make a case that might be a diamond there on the OIH. So watch for that. So could be something to watch there. CCJ hanging in there. Okay, this has been really resilient. I still think this is doing weekly consolidation. Same with URNM, but that's getting a nice bid, and the trend is back up on the daily, so that's holding up well. Nat gas finally getting a bounce here up 2.2. Got to get back above 3 and then 310 to make it interesting. But very, very short-term oversold here, going right back into the breakout level, and it's getting a bounce there. And we'll see what that does tomorrow. Dollar index we already talked about. But again, you held that green bar low on a closing basis. That's really all that matters. So if you bust out of this falling wedge, I don't see why you can't get back to 107, 107.30. And then if you break above that, and especially if you close above this on a weekly, which is 107, 108, then things really get interesting. Then I think you can go up to 109. So yeah, you might need to let those moving averages catch up on the weekly. That's possible, but I can't say anything bad about the dollar here. A lot of people crowned it as dead yesterday, and it's right back up and closed right at the highs of the day, pretty much. All right, gold here, holding up even with the strong dollar. So it was lower earlier. And again, this is kind of like a risk off thing too, right? Gold reversing that whole down move. Does need to consolidate, does need to pull back maybe a little bit. Let those moving averages catch up, but it's hanging in there okay. I wouldn't be surprised to see a retrace to 1900, but I don't see any problems here right now for GC. Same thing with silver, that's holding up okay. Let's extend this out here, and we'll see. Maybe that needs to get tested on the downside. But either way, silver hanging in there okay. Still a lot of resistance up here in this level. Platinum also backing off, still looking for that to go lower, still looking for palladium to go lower. Copper, a nice outside move, so got above that 20. I still don't love it though. Short-term upside is 370, and that's really all I see for it at the moment. Over to Bitcoin here. So obviously the big star of the day, dominating the news cycle. So there's been a lot of BS going on here. So I heard, there was rumors about the SEC dropping their lawsuit. Then there was more rumors about that wasn't true and that their ticker got pulled from the database. Lots of BS going on. Just be careful here. Don't chase this, whatever you do. If you want to buy this, at least wait for consolidation. Weekly consolidation, most likely. There's a lot of resistance up here. Look at these pivots there. Anybody who bought there is a bag holder, and that they're generally going to turn into sellers. You're also very extended. You're up 30% in the last week or so. So this needs to pull back bare minimum. I mean, you could probably even wait for 31, maybe even 30. But we'll see how this trades out here. And again, it's very Bitcoin dominant, right? We're seeing ETH get a bid here, but nowhere near the highs, right? And this hasn't even, we're not even above this red bar, this breakdown bar high yet. So again, it's very Bitcoin dominant, which leads me to believe potentially this could be, again, something to do with the banks, right? ETH didn't really bid like that. The alts didn't really bid like that in March. I mean, they got a bid, but nothing like what Bitcoin got. So I don't know if this is trying to act as risk off. I don't know what's going on. But I do think right now short-term 35 is good resistance there. And, if you get bottom line is if you close the week up here, Bitcoin turns pretty bullish though. Again, that does not mean to chase it, but that just means the technical picture has changed much. So, all right, anyways, lastly, let's take a look here. So it's 404. Google, taking a little bit of a hit. So it looks like their earnings are out. Wow, Google going down to 131. So that would take you all the way to, look at that. See, this is why charts are so good. Right down to that 100 moving average on the daily. You got a minor little channel, pseudo channel there on Google. And that's Google L, just so you guys know. The regular GOOG is at 132. So basically the same thing. Let's look at Microsoft. 346. I told you, I said 340. So it's up a little bit. So we got kind of a split here. Let's look at the NQ futures. And look at that. Look at that. Flat as a pancake. So Microsoft up, Google down. Let's look at Snap. Sell earnings on Snap every time, and then you just buy the dip. That works every time. I think Visa reporting as well. Take a look at that. They usually report a little bit later, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so nothing really doing there. Besides, Visa doesn't really move the market anyway. But yeah, okay, nice pop there for Microsoft. A lot of resistance up here at 350 if it gets up there. And who knows if they're even going to hold the gains going into tomorrow. Google rebounding a little bit here, so that's holding up all right. NQ getting a small bounce, and then the ES here again, obviously getting a small bounce as well. So decent earnings there. Bottom line, though, I don't really care. This is really the only area of interest to me right now is that moving average and that trend line there and that 4,300 handle. That's been a very good, very powerful psychological level here the last couple of weeks, especially on those 0DTE gammas. They love that level. So that's what I'll be watching going into tomorrow and really the end of the week if we are still in that area at that time. So anyways, guys, going to wrap it up here. You guys take care. Come find me on carnivoretrades.com. I will talk to you guys all tomorrow.